The Labour Party delivers its manifesto and the Conservatives attack it for making promises it can't pay for. So far, so normal. But then the Conservatives deliver theirs. And guess what? Labour makes exactly the same attack. The numbers don't add up, they say. It's a blank cheque, they say. Well, the man leading that charge is the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, who is in our Westminster studio. Let's talk first to our political editor, Laura Koonsberg. And Laura, the charge is that the Tories are stealing Labour's clothes. Is that true?
Well, I think, John, what we've seen in the Tory manifesto yesterday is what I'd describe as a bit of pick and mix. So in terms of ideas that Theresa May's put forward, some of them would have been rather friendly in the Labour manifesto last time around, but some of them are much more solid, sort of traditional Tory issues. But there certainly is not contradiction, but a sort of mixture of things rather than any one clear credo coming from any sort of strand of Tory thinking. But in terms of detail, well, yes, on some of those big policies, there is a lack of detail. On social care, for example, they want to show, however hard it might be, to crack this long-term problem. They're willing to grib the big issues, but there aren't clear financial thresholds about where their plans would kick in. They say they would have a green paper after the general election if they're re-elected to work out the finer details. It's the same on winter fuel allowance. Yes, they've said that they're willing to take that away from better-off pensioners, but rather than give us a threshold, again, as a promise, they would consult, there'd been a green paper, and then they'd work it out. Same on immigration. No timetable on that Tory claim that's been broken for 7 years, that they get it down to under the tens of thousands. So big promises in there that may be popular or they may be not. There's nothing in black and white in this manifesto that spells out the exact mechanisms.
But does it spell out the road down which Theresa May wants to travel?
I think it does, yes. And I think the way that the Conservatives want to frame this and actually want to frame her is as if an analysis of things that are wrong with the country, what she's described as the 5 great challenges of our time. I think what they are trying to do and pitch her as is somebody who will say, look, I acknowledge that everything's not perfect. Actually, in fact, I acknowledge that there are things that are not right about Britain in 2017, which, of course, her critics might say, well, you've been part of the government for the last 7 years. But they want to put her in that sort of position, in that kind of framing in the minds of the public, that, look, we need a lot of hard work to get things right. It may take some time to do so, but that she is sort of unafraid to get on with the job, to use the phrase she likes to use so much. But I think, you know, there are vulnerabilities here. There's that lack of detail. And also there's the character of such a pitch, if you like. Quite often party manifestos are sort of, come with me, everything will be wonderful. Well, what she's saying is, come with me, everything will be wonderful, but after quite a few years of things being pretty tough.
Laura, thank you very much for that. Mr. McDonnell, good morning to you.
Morning, John.
So we can sum that up really by saying Mrs. May is being pretty honest. She's saying it's going to be a tough road, but I'm going to do the right things and for the people who need our help the most. In other words, almost a Labour message.
Well, John, at this stage in the election campaign, you produce your manifesto and then you're meant to, well, people would expect you to say, this is the policy I'm going to implement, this is the cost, this is the funding source. Now, Labour has been criticised in the past for not doing that, and this week I did that. With our manifesto, I laid out a report with detailed costings for every policy, every costing, and where the funding source was. Now, people might not have agreed with the direction, they might not have agreed with an individual funding source or a tax rise or something like that, but we laid it out in detail, and that enabled us then to at least be honest with the people and say, this is what we're going to do. Here's how much it's going to cost, and here's how I'm going to raise the funds. Now, we expect that from political parties at this stage in the campaign. And what's happened here, it's exactly as you said. We've had a manifesto laid out, 60 uncosted commitments, and the only assurance on taxation is not, as we've said, we won't increase income tax or VAT or national insurance. And we certainly won't increase income tax for 95% of the population. The only assurance that Theresa May has given, the Conservatives have given, is that they'll cut corporation tax to big businesses.
Well, not quite. I
Well,
mean,
what else have they given?
Well, they have told you in terms that she has told you that they're getting rid of that promise not to put up VAT and so on and so on and so on. They've dumped that particular pledge.
She's dumped the tax up. That means we all have, if they get re-elected, people are insecure because taxes could go up, income tax could go up, national insurance could go up, it could hit employers as well as workers. We gave a pledge. Now, at this stage, on every item we put forward in our manifesto, I rolled out a detailed costing and a funding source. She's having a blank check. You would not let someone go off to the supermarket with a blank check, take things off the shelves and not tell you how much they're going to pay for them.
Well, except that in some cases she's doing precisely that, isn't she? For instance, she's going to means test the winter fuel allowance.
Well, no, John, that's not true, is it? That is just not true. She said they're going to means test it.
That's what's in the manifesto.
No, they said they're going to means test it, but they don't say who they're going to means test. Now, at the moment, we think...
Well, it's fairly obvious, isn't it? I mean, the people with the most money are not going to get it. I mean, it's straightforward.
John, it isn't obvious because they're saying they want to raise, I think it's about nearly 2 billion. If they do that, that means most probably means testing everyone apart from those on pension credits. That means 10 million pensioners this morning are waking up to the fact that they could lose their winter fuel allowance. Now, I find
do you want them to... hang on, 10 million pensioners are going to wake up knowing they're going to lose their winter fuel allowance. The richest of those pensioners will lose their winter fuel allowance. Are you wanting to featherbed them?
John, that's not what they're saying. They're saying they want to raise a significant sum, anything up to 1.5 or 2 billion.
By taxing the richest.
Well, I asked... Let's be absolutely clear. People on pensioner credits are some of the poorest in our society. A lot of other pensioners are having a hard time.
And they won't be penalised, though, will they? That's the whole point. They will not be penalised. Well, it's the same with changing the rules on how much you can keep.
Well, let me explain then why I think this is absolutely sick and sneaky. If it just is those people on pensioner credits, they know that a third of people who qualify for pensioner credits don't claim. They also know that we've got 1.7 million pensioners in our country living in poverty. They also know 1 million of them are in fuel poverty. That goes well beyond those on pensioner credits. Pensioners this morning, 10 million of them at risk of losing it.
Well,
let me just finish this point, John, because I'm really angry about it.
Well, I think you've made it fairly clear.
Well, let me tell you the statistics of this. 1 million pensioners in fuel poverty, 30,000 excess deaths every winter as a result of fuel poverty and basically people not being able to heat their homes.
I can only repeat what they have said in their manifesto, which is that those are the people who are going to keep that winter fuel allowance.
They have not said where the means test will lie.
All right.
Listen to David Davis this morning.
But at least there is going to be a means test.
No, all they've said is they're going to consult.
And under you there won't be, so the rich will benefit.
No, it isn't. It's the matter, actually, we have a universal benefit at the moment. Why? Because we know as soon as you start means testing, large numbers don't claim, even though they need it because it's so complicated.
Well, let's look at another example of this, and that is the cost of social care and where the threshold comes in. They're going to raise the threshold. You surely would have to approve of that, would you not?
Look, the whole point of the Dilnot report was to say, why don't we cap the costs so people can have some security and certainty? What they're doing under this proposal is that they're creating complete uncertainty, and it's a complete lottery about whether you get dementia or not. So that's why people yesterday are saying this is a dementia tax. Most of the commentators that have come in from the caring sector are saying this is not a long-term solution. What we should be doing is going back to the Dilnot proposals, having a proper consultation and getting all political parties round the table so that we can agree a way forward.
Where would you set the cap then?
It's not a matter of where you set the cap. We wanted
of course it is.
Sorry, we wanted to set the cap. If you remember what the Conservative proposal was about £72,000. After that, at least people would be assured they wouldn't have to pay any more. What this does, this basically means if you're at risk, if you get a serious illness or serious condition like dementia, you might be able to maintain your assets of £100,000, but you lose basically control of your home. And this is no solution.
Right, so in other words, let's be clear about this. In other words, if you've got, say, assets of £100,000, you keep that, right? What you're saying is if you've got assets of £900,000, you should be able to keep that as well.
No,
so in other words, the rich will benefit.
No, what I'm saying is we should return to the Dilnot proposals, which proposed having a cap, but then you pool the risk across the whole of society.
Yeah, but it's crucial where you set that cap, isn't it? Otherwise, the rich benefit.
Well, the individuals, the bulk of the individuals that would benefit from the Dilnot proposals would be those on average earnings or low earnings.
All right.
And you're in a situation where we pool the risk right the way across society, and in that way you take away this fear that people now have that if they get a serious condition like dementia, they'll be penalised.
All right. The argument against you, of course, is that you're protecting the rich. That's what it comes down to. And it sounds slightly bizarre, really, doesn't it?
No, it isn't. It's about universalism, where we're that phrase, we are all in this together, and that's the basis upon which we've created our welfare state, in which we've pooled risk, because that's more effectively done.
Let's try and get a little bit more detail from you about something that matters to a huge number of people, and that is immigration. We now know for sure that a Tory government, what they would do about immigration, which is to keep it below 100,000, or to get it below 100,000 rather than keep it.
Joke, isn't it?
Well, hang on. Let me just remind people.
They've said it 3 times. This is the third general election campaign they've said it in.
But at least we know what they want to do. Let's have a look at what you want to do. Hang on. What you want to do, and I'm quoting from your manifesto: working together, we will institute a new system which is based on our economic needs, balancing controls and existing entitlements. This may include employer sponsorship, work permits, visa regulations, or a tailored mix of all these, which works for the many, not the few. Forgive me, but that's meaningless, isn't it?
No, we're trying to arrive at a practical solution. Now, the issue now, last night, I listened to Michael Fallon on being interviewed. All of a sudden, the immigration target that they've set twice in general election campaigns and failed to meet.
We know what's happened with them. I'm asking you what you would do.
Let's put this in context.
Well, let's try and get an answer.
Let's put this in context. Twice it's been a general election campaign commitment from the Tories. Twice missed it, under Theresa May, by the way.
We know that.
Michael Fallon last night was asked the question, have you costed your proposal, which has gone from a policy to an ambition? He couldn't tell us the costs of that.
And I'm asking you to tell us what you would do.
Well, what we're trying to do is ensure that we have a system that reflects the needs of our economy. Because the costs that have been put forward independently is anything like 4 to 6 billion of the Tories' proposals.
Final quick thought.
We have to have a system which reflects the needs of our society.
Final quick thought about the outcome of this election. Len McCluskey, your great supporter, says 200 seats for Labour would be a success. How many do you think would be a success?
No, he was much more optimistic the next day and said we've got a good chance of winning this election.
He came under a bit of pressure, that's for sure, and he said you've got a chance. But
he didn't come under pressure. He just woke up more optimistic the next morning. Must have had a good breakfast, John.
All right. How optimistic are you then? Tell us what you reckon. After a decent breakfast,
we're going to win. We're rising in the polls, and now that people have seen this Tory manifesto, I tell you, 10 million pensioners out there will be very angry. Large numbers of young people will be angry because there's no future in this manifesto. I think we're going to win, and we're going to win it on the basis of the positive hope we're giving people, rather than this vague blank cheque that Theresa May has demanded, when the triple whammy that's hitting our pensioners.
John McDonnell, many thanks.